Welcome to GRE. I'm your host, Keith Whitehold. Why settle for growing your money at a 5% interest rate in a savings account, money market account, or treasury bonds? You could earn double that or more. In fact, we're talking about exactly where I invest my more liquid dollars myself, often with a real estate-centric backing, today on Get Rich Education.
You're listening to the show that has created more financial freedom than nearly any show in the world. This is Get Rich Education.
Welcome to GRE. From Hartford, England to Hartford, Connecticut, and across 188 nations worldwide, I'm Keith Whitehold. You're listening to episode 475 of the Get Rich Education podcast, the voice of real estate investing since 2014. Don't live below your means, grow your means. It's in your genes. Most people tie up so much life energy in their job, and they're scared to death of losing their job because it provides everything to them, not just their salary, but their health care, their retirement, and even who they are, and then even their very identity is in their job. Now, so that might be okay, especially if you truly get a deep existential meaning from your job and you get that sense. In fact, in that case, thank you. You're probably serving society and I might be a beneficiary of that. But now we isolate the financial part of your job. It is a real mystery to me how so many study how work works, so few study how money works, and yet money is the main reason that people go to work. In the personal finance world, it's more important to increase your income than cut your expenses. Spend more time building a cash flow statement. See, that's constructive to your standard of living, not a budget which is destructive to your quality of life. Think of residual income in terms of what I like to call your financial runway. Your financial runway. Yeah, it is that amount of time you can maintain your lifestyle without the need for a paycheck. So the length of your financial runway is measured in time, and it is critical for you to lengthen this runway if you hope to retire early, and it can dramatically reduce your stress level too. Well, that can create outcomes so that you can, say, go on a super long vacation and make your ostentatious display of time wealth as it is. Now, at some point in your life, you probably listened to GRE and had the Real Estate Pays 5 Ways epiphany, and it is really compelling to then keep the majority of your capital invested there, for sure. But you likely don't want to keep absolutely 100% of your dollars there because you need some liquidity to fund the operations of your daily life. In fact, you can make the case that you need more liquidity than a non-real estate investor does. Now, a 6-month emergency fund is the rule of thumb for lay people, but on top of that, as a real estate investor, it's also a good idea to have 3 to 5% of the total value of your real estate portfolio in liquid funds. Now, a lot of people hold liquidity in a bank, and you do that as either a demand depositor or a time depositor. In fact, in banking vernacular, do you know the difference between demand deposits and time deposits? Well, demand deposit accounts, they include things like checking accounts, savings accounts, and money market accounts, and they're called demand deposits because they allow you to withdraw your money from the account whenever you want to. That is different from time deposit accounts like a CD, which requires you to deposit your money for a specific length of time. So that's the difference between a demand deposit and a time deposit. So time deposits, like a CD, certificate of deposit, therefore they pay you a higher rate of interest in exchange for your reduced liquidity. Now, with that understanding, let's take a time out here to remind ourselves of something. When money flees the stock market, which it often does, it usually ends up in bonds. As demand for bonds goes up, their interest rates go down. Then as bond interest rates go down, investors go back to stocks in pursuit of yield, and everything reverses. So that is an ebb and flow of funds, which creates a degree of equilibrium, but it also moderates your return, and you're also never going to get in and out at just the right time, trying to time those markets. So when it comes to your dollars that you don't have being actively leveraged in real estate, you can't hit every note in the symphony yourself with just one investment vehicle. It takes an orchestra full of your prosperity, all your dollars, all playing their notes boldly to help you hear the complexity of the composition. Well, when you park money at an everyday bank or a treasury bond, either way, you're now making a loan. And oftentimes the exact way that loan is backed, your collateral, that's actually unknown to you. Well, instead of that, what we're talking about today is that you can lend to the long-term stability of residential real estate and related businesses and still get a strong return. And yes, I'm focused on the resilience of residential, just like we have here at GRE from day one. Now, when it comes to something more precarious, a really touchy section like office real estate, WeWork, they're expected to seek Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection after that embattled office space company missed interest payments that it owed to its bondholders. So instead, you can keep your more liquid and semi-liquid dollars working for you as a loan to someone else in residential and enjoy some of the condensation on that pipe with returns that are about double what you can get on a 5% savings account today. Now, today, it is the right time to talk about returns of 10% plus because just a year or two ago, we were in this inversion where inflation was higher than interest rates. That's atypical. In fact, in June of last year, CPI inflation peaked just over 9%. And you got to ask yourself, how attractive is a 10% return on your liquid dollars if inflation is 9%? Well, that's not attractive to you at all because your real rate of return would only be 1% in that case. But now with inflation down, you can get a higher real return again. Today, interest rates are higher than stated CPI inflation, and even the true rate of inflation, if you know where to look for that and you have a sense for what that is. Today, I'll help you know where to look because it's exactly where I invest my liquidity today. See, in order to do this, it's really investing like a billionaire, and you don't need to have some wealthy sounding name like Brandon Merriweather, Rudiger Bertram, Lawrence Perrybottom, or Carruthers Davenport. You don't need any names like that. You just need the knowledge. Now, I guess I would call you Carruthers if you preferred, but I think you'd sound like a guy that blows rings of smoke into people's faces, and I don't think that's a good look for you. We'll talk to the custodian of my funds here shortly. I make private loans to her company. She and I both serve on the Forbes Real Estate Council. She is a strong visionary, and she's not afraid to discuss problems either. That's something I really like. In fact, I'll be sure that comes up. This could really help you today. That's next. I'm Keith Weinhold, and you're listening to Get Rich Education. GRE listeners can't stop talking about their service from Ridge Lending Group and MLS 42056. They've provided our tribe with more loans than anyone. They're truly a top lender for beginners and veterans. It's where I go to get my own loans for single-family rental property up to 4 plexes. So start your pre-qualification and you can chat with President Chaley Ridge personally. They'll even deliver your custom plan for growing your real estate portfolio. Start at ridgelendinggroup.com. I'll just tell you, for the most passive part of my real estate investing, personally, I put my own dollars with Freedom Family Investments because their funds pay me a stream of regular cash flow, and returns are better than a bank savings account, up to 12%. Their minimums are as low as $25K. You don't even need to be accredited for some of them. It's all backed by real estate, and I kind of love how the tax benefit of doing this can offset capital gains and your W-2 job's income. And they've always given me exactly their stated return, paid on time. So it's steady income, no surprises while I'm sleeping or just doing the things I love. For a little insider tip, I've invested in their Power Fund. To get going on that, text family to 66866. Oh, and this isn't a solicitation. If you want to invest where I do, just go ahead and text family to 66866.
This is Hal Elrod, author of The Miracle Morning, and listen to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold, and don't quit your daydream.
Well, hey, I'd like to welcome back onto the show today the co-founder and CEO of the whole operation, Freedom Family Investments. There's 7 real estate-centric companies based in Centerville, Ohio. By the way, the other co-founder is her husband, Flip, whom you've heard on the show before. Hey, we are graced with the presence of Dani, Lynn, Robison.
Hello, Keith. I'm so happy to be here.
So good to see you again. I've got to congratulate you on your success. You've got 62 team members there now in your vertically integrated companies. And by the way, that's a term, vertically integrated, that might throw some listeners off. I'm going to come back and explain just what that term means. They've done over 1,500 deals now. They've acquired 600 plus units since 2020, and they've raised more than $20 million through podcasts and word of mouth. And they now have a portfolio valued at $32 million plus. They've been in real estate since 2008, and they'll tell you that they have a perfect track record of always returning investor capital, including to me. I'm one of their investors, and paying 100% of the returns as promised, even if they themselves lost money on a deal. We'll talk about what losing money on a deal looks like in a moment. And in fact, you, the listener, you've probably heard me talk about how I personally participate for a high yield return with them myself, with Dani Lynn's company backing me near the middle of GRE episodes like this right here. You know, I'll just tell you, for the most passive part of my real estate investing, personally, I put my own dollars with Freedom Family Investments because their funds pay me a stream of regular cash flow, and returns are better than a bank savings account, up to 12%. Well, with having listened to that, Dani, I want to ask you about your Master Note program shortly. But first, since this is Get Rich Education, emphasizing the education part here, I think the term vertically integrated, that might throw some people off. It sounds like a mouthful. And what is that, Dani Lynn? 7 syllables? But it is a term that you, the listener, you see that and hear that across the entire business world. Vertically integrated, that's a term for a business strategy where a company takes ownership of 2 or more stages of its supply chain. So, for example, a vertically integrated automaker, they might produce automobile components and vehicles and also sell directly to customers. All right, that's ownership of multiple stages of a supply chain. So to me, it comes down to vertically integrated. It means that you now have more control. So Dani, tell me about how that vertical integration applies to your 7 real estate companies.
You nailed it as far as the definition and really why we created all of the companies. When we first initially created our turnkey real estate company, we hadn't had the intention of bringing everything in-house. But as we outsourced different pieces of the renovation or the property management, we found that the lack of control that we had was hurting us and hurting our investors. And so one by one, we would bring in a company. So first was renovations, because of all the contractor nightmares that many fix and flippers have experienced themselves. We had them too, and in spades, because we were doing volume. So we brought that in-house first, so that we can control the subcontractors and the project management and the scopes of work and how we paid our contractors. The next thing we brought in-house was property management. And then we had a brokerage so that we could just list our properties on the MLS internally and keep that in-house as well, since we had to have a broker anyway. And then acquisitions got brought in-house because the wholesalers we were buying all of our deals from went dry with deals. And we're like, hey, we need deals. And so we brought the marketing in-house and started doing acquisitions. And then I've told this story of drugs, thugs, and bugs many times about our 56-unit apartment complex that led to company number 6, which is our fund and syndication company. That was a really great company because it allowed our private money lenders to be able to start putting their money to use 24/7 instead of going in and out of deals. And then company number 7 is going to be a hard money lending company, because as we've raised all of this capital, we found that there's times we have excess capital and we don't want to say no to incoming investors. So we started using that to network with our masterminds groups and saying, hey, let us know if you've got a deal going on. We'll underwrite it. And if we feel like it's a good deal, we'll go ahead and lend on that deal for you. And it allowed us to keep putting that money to work for our investors. So it's been really fantastic. Helped us as an internal company, helped our investors be able to earn more returns, and helped our entire network just do more things with us.
That's vertical integration. And I like that. I hadn't heard that before. Drugs, thugs, and bugs can lead to an epiphany that creates a new company, bringing more in-house. So for you, the listener, the least you need to remember is vertical integration. That means control. And one of your companies vertically integrated into that, Dani, is something that can benefit the listener here, and that is your lending arm. Now, your most popular program for giving everyday investors high yield returns is your Master Note program. That's actually a common program in the private lending industry, but some might not know about it. So go ahead and talk to us about what your Master Note program is.
So this was brought to us by an investor who was working with us and said, hey, I love your private money lending program. You know, I've researched you. He actually found us on Forbes and came to our office and visited and said, I would really love to lend, but I don't necessarily want to keep going in and out of deals. And so we worked with an attorney and said, hey, what can we do in order to keep an investor's money at work? And so he talked with us and we explored different ideas, and we kind of went back and forth between us and the investor and the attorney, and ultimately created this program called the Master Note program, which offers investors 10 to 12% returns. It offers them liquidity, so they can get cash out at any year that they want. So they'll invest, and every single year they have the opportunity to say, hey, I'm going to go ahead and give you 180 days notice to get my cash back. So the liquidity piece has been really, really powerful, especially for private money lenders, because the reason that private money lenders like that program is because they know that they're going to get their capital back in 12 months or less. And at that point in time, they're going to say, hey, do I want to invest again? Yes. Okay, I do. Or, hey, I could use this money for something else that I was waiting for. And in the meantime, it was earning interest while I was waiting to use it for this other avenue. So the Master Note program was really just meant to have flexibility and to be able to customize the program based on the investor's goals. So what we've done is created a 5-year auto-renewing note. So that way, these investors can say, hey, Dani, I've got $100,000. I'd like to invest that with you. And at that $100,000 level, that is 12% interest. And so they put the money in, and they know that every single year, it's either going to auto-renew or they're going to say, hey, I'm ready for the money to come back to me. And it also allows us to give them compound interest. I would say over half of our investors are not investing with us for distributions or cash flow. They actually are investing with us because they trust us and they trust our track record, and they want their money to grow. And so they actually choose to compound instead of taking the distributions, which allows for faster growth.
Your Master Note program, 10 to 12% returns. I know it's just a $25K minimum, so it's really available to investors. So, okay, unlike an old, say, 5-year certificate of deposit from a bank that might only pay you 5%, plus you're illiquid for 5 years with a conventional instrument like that, you can cash out your Master Note any year, or you can just keep rolling it over. You have the option.
Exactly right. And so what's interesting is we all like liquidity. I know Flip and I like liquidity. It's nice that you got this peace of mind that you can access your capital if you choose to do so. But in reality, most of us leave the money exactly where it's at. We like to see the growth. We like to see, the returns that we're getting, and we get excited and we're like, where else am I going to put this money? So I love having the ability to get it back. But I would say 95% of the people in our Master Note program and even our funds, after they get to the period in which they committed to, whether that be a year or 3 years, just depends on the vehicle that they're using, they stay. They're like, I love this. This is fantastic. You can keep my money and just keep it growing.
Real estate is largely thought of as an equity-based investment. You, the listener, are putting 20 to 25% down and borrowing the rest. That's great. We talk about the virtues of doing that all the time, but you're not very liquid when you do that. Here, we're getting on the opposite side. Rather than being on the equity side, you're on the debt side. You're making a loan, and you have higher liquidity this way.
Exactly right. And so with our Master Note program, the way that we worked it out with the attorney is it's used for both deals and our business growth. So that's really important that I think that we talk about, because the private money lending, let me give an example. Private money lending, you're going to maybe loan us $70,000, and that's going to cover an acquisition and rehab of a property. But maybe you had $100,000 available. Now your $70,000 is backed by a lien on that property. And then once we're done with the rehab and once we resell the property, then we're going to give you all of your capital back plus the interest that you were owed for the time that we borrowed your money. Now, this is where our private money lenders said, Dani, will you keep my money? And if you're a private money lender, I have to say, no, I can't. I have to give you back your money because you have to sign a release of mortgage. There's a lien on that property. You have to sign the release that you got your capital back. And then we can give you another deal, and that might take 2 weeks or 2 months. What the Master Note program provided for investors was allowing them to invest with us, still being used on deals, but for our protection, if we didn't have a deal to put money into, then we can use it for the growth of the company. So right now we're actually partnering with another investor who is out of Columbus, and we are creating a home supply company of materials. We have this opportunity to buy materials at huge, massive discounts. And so we're working on acquiring the office space that we're in, which has 20,000 square feet of a warehouse right next to us. And we're going to buy in bulk all of these materials. And not only is that reducing the cost of our business and our rehabs, but now we can help other investors in the local area save money. And we have created a revenue stream as a result. The growth of all of the companies has been a result of working with investors exactly like this. So now the investor gets to say, hey, Dani, I'm going to give you $100,000 and I'm going to invest it in this Master Note program. Now they got to use $30,000 more of their capital as opposed to the $70,000 example I used for private money lending. So they can put all the capital they want to use. And then me, if I have a $70,000 deal, then I'm still going to use it on that same deal, and it's owned by our company. And then that other $30,000, then I can use it for things like we're buying materials in bulk, and it's allowing us to save money on those rehabs. It's allowing us to create another revenue stream. So it allows us to have a little bit of flexibility, and it allows the investors to have a higher return, still have that liquidity piece, and still have it backed by real estate and or our business.
Well, what an explanation. And you know what's interesting, Dani, Lynn, listening back to that is the realization that most bank depositors don't have any idea how that bank is investing their money. They don't know how their deposit is backed at all. But with an explanation like that that's substantive, we really do here. So it's really an interesting contrast. We discussed the details of your Master Note program, including where you can get up to a 12% return. Tell us about the other opportunities that you have besides your Master Note program.
Because of our vertical integration, we have many different things that we can offer. If you're a passive investor, we have turnkey real estate. We do have private money lending, the Master Note program. We have funds that also provide great returns. And one of them we're getting ready to launch in the next couple of weeks is offering even more liquidity, allowing people to get in and out in 90 days. So for those who don't want to wait a full year, maybe they just want to, hey, I just want to put my money to use and I want to have this access to it every 90 days. We're now allowing people to have that option. And that is really a reflection of our conversations with investors and seeing what they want based on today's market, today's economy, what they feel comfortable investing in. So that's some of the passive investor opportunities. For our active investors, we don't typically serve them, but I thought, hey, you know what? We're buying all of these deals and we're getting all of these leads. Some of the deals we don't want. Maybe it's because we have enough and we don't want to buy another one because our rehab team is stretched. I mean, we don't want to have a house sitting for a couple months for our rehab team to be able to get to it. Sometimes there's other reasons. So now we are starting to wholesale properties to investors who are active that are wanting to flip the properties themselves for a higher profit. And because we're vertically integrated, we said, hey, if you want to buy one of these wholesale properties that we're not buying ourselves, we have a renovations department. We have a property management department. We have a brokerage. So if you're an out-of-state investor, you've got an entire team you can leverage through us to be able to buy a property as is, get it renovated, and then either sell it on the market or hold it and have our property management company look after it. So we're just continually trying to expand what we can do in service of other investors.
I love that we can let the term vertically integrated just roll off our tongue now that everyone knows that it means having control of multiple portions of the supply chain of their business, a real estate business in this case. Again, we're talking with Dani Lynn Robison. She is the co-founder and the CEO of Freedom Family Investments. You deal with investors on both the more active side and the passive side. Smartly, I know, Dani Lynn, that you don't call turnkey real estate investing passive. Even though it's mostly passive, it's not completely passive. You have both passive and active sides. You know what investors want. You know the palette of items to offer them with what interests them. So with that in mind, tell us just a bit more on the landscape overall and just how you serve people. I know a lot of them, for example, they might wonder, now, do I need to be accredited or do I need to be non-accredited? And tell us more about the minimum investments amounts, kind of that bar to clear in order to participate with you, just like I am myself.
For the minimum investments, it's $25,000. That's typical for turnkey properties. That's typical for our master note program. And then $50,000 for some of our funds, also our private money lending program. And then for the accredited versus non-accredited, we have both options. So there are rules as to when we can offer certain investment opportunities if you're non-accredited. So things like private money lending, turnkey investing, master note program, those are all opportunities for non-accredited investors. And then for our accredited investors, we have funds that are, it's 506C. It's a little bit technical, but it's the way the SEC says, hey, you can talk about this, you can advertise it, but you can only allow accredited investors inside. So as we worked with our attorney, we were like, okay, we don't want to serve just accredited investors. So how do we make sure that we're serving both at the same time? And so we've made sure to just really have a variety of offerings. And I talk to people a lot about what you said about active versus passive. I think that's a really, really important conversation because many people who are getting into the real estate game, they don't know whether they want to be active or passive. And so many of them end up being active first, only to realize they just created another job for themselves. And then they go, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. I actually want to live a quality life. I want to spend time traveling. I want to spend time with my spouse or my kids and just enjoy life. And I didn't mean to create another job, even though it is building wealth. And then they move to the passive side so that they can get mailbox money or have their money working for them while they sleep or while you are traveling, like you just got back from traveling, Keith, and I loved watching your Facebook posts, right? I love having that educational piece of really talking to somebody about what their goals are, what the quality of life is that they want, so they don't make a mistake of going active only to feel like they lost some time, because the active journey is difficult. Like, it's not been easy to build 7 real estate companies, and we've got 2 more in the wings that we're getting ready to, launch, that we talked about, even the home supply company. It's not an easy road. You make a lot of mistakes. You lose a lot of money. And so when somebody has capital to invest and their goal is to grow their wealth, build wealth, have a legacy, be able to retire, not worry about money, going the active route may seem like I'm going to make more money because I'm going to get the big chunk of equity. But it ends up being something where they learn the hard lessons themselves and then usually waste a lot of time and energy and frustration only to realize that they probably could have made equal, if not more, on the passive side and not had all the stress. So I love really having that conversation with everybody. I love active and passive investors alike. It's just making sure that they truly know what journey they want to be on.
In my mind, the term ROI, return on investment, is more active, and a term that I've talked about, ROTI, return on time invested, with that being considered, that falls more on the passive side. With you guys' experience and understanding, you're surely quite cognizant of that. Why don't you talk to us about some of the other questions that you get from new investors, things that really they want to know about before going ahead and making a loan and participating in a lending opportunity with you?
So the top 3 questions that we get is, where do I start? Which path is right for me? And who do I trust? And I actually talked to one of our investors who has grown his seed capital of $100,000 into $2.5 million with us over the course of 4 years that he's been investing. Every time he has capital, he's like, what opportunities do you have and where can I put my money? And in it, again, we talk about compound. He has been compounding since day one with us and is really allowed his capital to grow extensively. When I was interviewing him to tell his story about his journey with us and his experience, he actually said, those questions are funny, Dani Lynn. I would tell you that you should ask them in the opposite order. You should say, who do I trust? And then once you know who to trust, then ask, where do I start and which path is right for me? And I do agree that the trust question is the most critical piece of the puzzle, because so many times I get on the phone and I talk to investors who have lost money working with somebody else. And so they've maybe heard me on your podcast or seen me somewhere else and heard me say over and over, private money lenders, our investors are our number one priority. I am never going to put myself in a position where they're not receiving their full capital back, receiving every single penny owed for the interest of the time that I was using their capital. And I'll allow myself to lose money to make sure that they get paid. And that's so important to me that I tell people very often, and I say, you want to work with people that will be transparent enough to say, this is my worst deal. This is what happened. And what you're going to get by asking that question is a revealing of their character, who they are. How did they treat that situation? How was the investor treated in that situation? And what happened? Did they tuck tail and run? Did they walk away, which many investors do? They get frustrated and they're like, oh my gosh, I lost all this money. What am I going to do? And they stop answering their phone. They stop answering emails. And then the investors are stuck with a house. I think the questions like that are really important, looking at track records and just asking the hard stuff, understanding the true nature of a person. And then lastly, the which path is right for me is a question of really understanding that active and passive piece, and then understanding your goals when it comes to money. Is it cash flow? Is it growth? Is it tax benefits? Is it liquidity? What are the things? Diversification. There's so many goals you can have in investing. And if you don't know the questions to ask, then you might not be hitting the goals that you truly desire in life.
Now, we learned about a really good investor outcome there. How about a bad outcome or a worst deal? And then how did you cover that to make sure the investor is made whole?
Our worst deal is a duplex in Dayton. And what happened was one of the reasons we brought our renovations company in-house, because we had a project manager, we had a runner, and one of the processes that we have is when the contractors are rehabbing a property, then the runner will go to the properties and just double check that what their invoice is saying, that they actually did the work, and then we will pay them. So the project manager is trusting the runner. The runner is saying he went to the houses and we're paying this contractor. And it turns out one of the contractors had not done anything. The pictures that they were submitting to us was from another property they were rehabbing. So it looked like he was doing the work.
Gosh.
The runner was relying on those pictures as his proof instead of actually going to the property and physically seeing the work being done. And we were paying them as a result of this hierarchy of process that we had. So we ended up having a property where none of it got rehabbed, and we paid the full amount of rehab to that contractor. So we had to pay for the rehab twice. So in this situation, we lost over $50,000. Our investor didn't even know what happened. And I say that not because we weren't being transparent. It's because we were going to do exactly what we said we were going to do. They were going to get all of their capital back, and they were going to get every single penny of interest owed. We ended up asking them at the end of 12 months, do you mind extending on this loan? We're still working on it. It's okay if you don't want to. We will still get you paid back plus all interest, and we'll replace your loan with another private money lender. They said, no, it's no problem. Absolutely, you can extend. So by the time it was all done, we actually had the house fully rehabbed. We had lost a lot of capital. The reason that we can cover situations like that and make sure that we're honoring our word to our investors is because we do volume. When you do volume, I tell people, this is what I say, If you've been in real estate long enough, you understand you're going to lose money. You understand that you're going to pull back walls and find things that you did not anticipate. So doing volume was our way of mitigating that risk. If we're doing 10 deals a month and 2 of them go bad, well, we've got 8 others that are covering the 2 that went bad. And so it's a numbers game for us, knowing that we're going to find some duds. We're going to make some mistakes. And that's okay because we're playing the volume game.
Oh, that harrowing story about the contractor and the runner, that comes back to the old Ronald Reagan trust but verify there, right? So,
right.
Well, thanks for sharing a more difficult story with us like that. Well, Dani, as we're winding down here, you do a lot of things there at Freedom Family Investments because you have this big holistic picture since you are a vertically integrated company, and that's given you the experience and the wisdom to do a lot of things. I know you have a book published and you're speaking at events around the theme Get Real. I own your book, Get Real. Can you quickly tell us more about it?
So our very first book was Get Real, Understand Real Estate Investing Before It's Too Late. And it was just our first book. It's going to be a series of Get Real books. It was our first book to really introduce people that were new to real estate. What is it? Why do we love it? Why do we have such a passion for building real estate businesses and love that we can not only grow wealth for ourselves, but we can help other investors do the same? And then the Get Real part of it, the reason that we love this is actually one of my marketing team members. Actually, you know him. Matthew, he's the one that came up with a Get Real brand. And it's really become something that people say, hey, Flip and Dani, you guys are so down to earth. Like, I feel like I can talk to you about anything. And you're so transparent. You tell us the ups and the downs and the crazy roller coaster rides. And there's so many people that are on social media or on podcasts that will just tell you the rosy rainbows and sunshine stories, as if nothing goes wrong. And I think reality is people want to work with people that are just more authentic, that are willing to share, hey, I'm human, I'm not perfect, we're going to make mistakes, but watch how we correct those mistakes. Watch how we act during those situations. And I think if you can do that, you actually gain more trust. And that's something that surprises a lot of the masterminds that I'm in when they say, how do you have so many investors? How do you raise so much capital? I'm just authentic and transparent about everything that we do. And that garners a lot of trust in the people because not a lot of people are willing to talk about their failures, that $50,000 loss on a duplex. And I don't know why, but it builds trust instead of loses it. And their jaw drops to the ground going, oh my goodness, I can talk about my failures. And I'm like, yes, start. People want to know that you're real. So I think that Get Real concept is important. So we're going to keep on creating some more books. We have investors that are giving us ideas of, hey, write a book about this. So we're going to keep on releasing them. And we're also speaking at events nationwide and just getting down to earth for people and letting them know, hey, stop telling yourself you can't. Anybody can build wealth. Keith, you run a great podcast. You have so many loyal listeners and we love talking to them. And you have helped, educate people for years and years and years. And we just need more people out there doing that.
Well, thanks. The name of the platform and book is Get Real. Dani, Lynn, in closing, why don't you let our audience know about the best way to reach out to you and learn more about your private lending programs, including your Master Note program? Because for you, the listener, if this sounds interesting, here you go. I mean, this is where I tie up a lot of my liquid funds for a high return. Let our audience know how they can learn more.
All you have to do is text family to 66866.
Dani, Lynn, it's been valuable as always. Thanks so much for coming back onto the show.
Thank you so much, Keith. It's an honor.
Yeah, good stuff from Dani Lynn Robison of Freedom Family Investments today. Let's review what we've learned. Demand deposit accounts, which include things like checkings accounts, savings accounts, and money market accounts, they allow you to withdraw money from the account whenever you want, whereas time deposit accounts like CDs require you to deposit your money for a specific length of time. Vertical integration, that's a term for a business strategy where a company takes ownership of multiple stages of its supply chain. And the term financial runway, that is the amount of time you can maintain your lifestyle without the need for a paycheck. As you know, I often like to leave you with something actionable. Their Master Note program offers 10 to 12% returns, some liquidity, and just a $25K minimum. And another way to think about it is that, in fact, then that is a 10 to 12% cash on cash return. And if you're interested in being more nimble than that, there are other lending programs where you can get a strong return with just 90-day liquidity. And to get started on any of them or simply learn more, text FAMILY to 66866. Until next week, where we've got a great show for you, I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Don't quit your daydream.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, GetRichEducation.com.